Hi and welcome to Framed, a Let's Play with focus on cinematography. My name's Aubrey and I'm going to be your host. Today we're playing Uncharted 4, Chapter 19, Avery's Descent. As always, there could be spoilers, so please watch out for that. I would hate to ruin this amazing game for you. So, play the game, come back, and then watch my Let's Play. I think the chapter title is interesting because when you think of descent in conjunction with a person, one can't help but think of descent into madness. And Avery certainly does that, as we will see later on in this chapter. And I love right here what they say is that this place doesn't look very stable. Avery was probably not in the most stable mindset when he was making this crazy underground tunnel. And some of the things he's about to do and we're about to see also does not show a stable mindset of a person who is well. So I think it's really interesting that, once again, the place takes on so much. It shows, it reflects kind of what's going on thematically and with the person. So much of this game is a reference to Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, all of those adventure type things. Obviously the spikes actually really remind me of Tomb Raider. That's because that's what I've been exposed to. They obviously came from Indiana Jones. But I don't want to dwell too long on that because I think all of Uncharted 4, I mean, that's pretty obvious that these games are heavily inspired by Indiana Jones, and it's fun. A playable Indiana Jones is awesome and clearly successful. But I think the puzzle's interesting because I think it shows Avery, not just that he was trying to keep people away, but that his mind was a bit of a labyrinth at the moment. The recent mud footprints on that puzzle suggest that those who tread the same way might suffer the same fate, so definitely something to consider. I really love this scene because the last thing Nate sees before the light goes out is Elena. And when he's trying to be self-reliant and has his own supplies, he's literally cast in the dark. And what happens is that we don't know how long he's going to be in the dark for. We don't know if, like maybe there's no backup plan. Maybe we're going to have to explore this cave in the dark for a long time. But Elena is guiding Nate through this whole experience. She's the one that has a cool, level head, which is usually what Nate's doing, but they complement each other really well, that they are able to support each other when the other one is not doing so great. And so Elena is ready and brought matches and is the one with supplies and everything. It didn't sink to the bottom of the ocean. And here, where we see just the faintest light, is sort of like their relationship, again, rekindling, you can think of, because Nate is finally drawn to her. Instead of adventure, he's drawn to Elena like a moth to a flame. So this orange takes on a whole new symbolism. Instead of it being Nate and Sam drawn to adventure like moths to the flame, Nate is drawn to Elena, and their love is sort of that new orange, that new rekindling of their relationship. So I think it's really great that you get to see it here. I really enjoy the symbolic shift of how it starts out small, that relationship, that fire, and then it burns really bright. And Elena's holding not one but two torches. She's always thinking of her partner, her literal partner. And they get to have that romance that's at first was about to die out and was almost cast out, but was able to be resparked. It was able to be saved because they worked for it and they work together for it. And so Nate is now no longer craving that adventure, that treasure, but he craves family, and his values have changed, and we get to see it sort of in a symbolic way with these flames, with this light, with this sort of passion. So the blue and orange throughout the whole game, which has always represented Sam and Nate, now changes, and it is such a beautiful way transition for Naughty Dog to do this. I really can't help but nerd out over this scene a lot. Sorry. You might be wondering why there's no blue, but there's blue later on in this chapter, so keep an eye out for that. This next scene is so creepy. Walking into a room of a bunch of skeleton hands draped down from the ceiling is just, yeah, it's creepy. And I think it's interesting because it's like death is literally reaching down for Nate and Elena right now. These skeleton hands are bundled together, and even the light where to put their torch is made out of the bones of the dead. It's pretty creepy stuff. So I feel a bit silly
get
for
out of
not
here.
talking about the skull and crossbones symbol a little bit more in depth earlier, especially because we've seen it littered throughout this game. But I figured since we're in a cave full of bones, now's a good time as any to talk about it, because I really do feel like I would be remiss if I didn't explain the symbol a little bit more in depth. So according to Wikipedia, the skull and crossbones symbol originated in the late Middle Ages as a symbol of death, and especially as memento mori on tombstones. So even Wikipedia acknowledges it's memento mori, which I've been talking about through this whole game. I'm sure you're tired of hearing of. In modern contexts, it's generally used as a hazard symbol that warns of danger, so very appropriate again with Nathan. And I think these are things that people pretty much intuitively know, that the skull and crossbones is dangerous. It's something we've seen for forever. So none of this is like really groundbreaking news. This symbol originates from Danse Macabre, which means the dance of death in French. It's an artistic genre of late medieval allegory on the universality of death. No matter one's station in life, the dance of death unites us all. So the Danse Macabre consists of the dead or personified dead, summoning representatives from all walks of life to dance along the grave. They were produced as memento mori to remind people of all the fragility of their lives and how vain the glories of earthly life were. So if that's not the theme of this game, I don't know what is. The skull and crossbones symbol has also been used on military flags or insignia, typically expressing recklessness or ferocity of the unit displaying it. So that's definitely true with Henry Avery, and there's a lot of recklessness from Nathan, who is pursuing Henry Avery, basically, and Sam especially. It also has become associated with piracy, which I don't think anyone is surprised by either. In the 18th century, the Jolly Roger is a traditional English name for the flags flown to identify a pirate ship about to attack in the early 18th century. The most commonly identified Jolly Roger today is the skull and crossbones. So not every Jolly Roger is a skull and crossbones. Anyways, the origin of this term goes back as far as A General History of Pirates by Charles Johnson. And if that book sounds familiar to you, it should. Because that's Sam's favorite book of all time. And we saw it in Evelyn's house, the old lady's house, in that flashback earlier. These Jolly Roger flags don't have to necessarily be black. They can also be green or even red, which we have seen a lot before and will continue to see again, definitely. Quick break from all the history and chat, but I was wondering if this line that Nathan just said is a little bit of a reference to Archer with tinnitus and the blowing up and am I yelling thing. I don't know. It's a stretch, but maybe. All right, back to your regularly scheduled pirate history. There are also mentions of Francis Drake flying a black flag as early as 1585, but the historicity of this tradition has been called into question. That leads us to talk a little bit more about Francis Drake. So I'm only going to give you a few facts about Drake because I could go on forever since Naughty Dog has researched him clearly so thoroughly. But a few facts that I think pertain to this game are that he was the person to initiate piracy on the Pacific Ocean on the west coast of the Americas, which had previously been free, so definitely important to note here. And he also died in Panama, which is where Sam had also quote-unquote died as well. So those are two parallels to this game that I think are interesting and obviously intentional. I said look out for the blue, and here it is. Here we have a room that is literally divided in half. So on the left there is blue, and on the right there's orange from an orange torch that is lit. And on the left, a torch that is emitting blue light. I guess it's magnesium, I'm not quite sure. But I think at this point it's sort of symbolic, as I said before, instead of Nate and Sam, it sort of symbolizes Nate and Elena right now and their relationship. So they're a bit hot and cold at the moment. Not that Elena's not begrudging Nate, she's here, it's her husband, but they still have stuff to work out. It's not, their relationship isn't completely healed yet, and so they're on a bit of a hot and cold situation, which is what these colors kind of represent to me. Upon Googling this phrase, the mouth that spoke ill of me, I was led to a book called Identity and Change, Nigerian Philosophical Studies. And it led me to a name called Anakuga, and the definition of that name is the mouth that spoke ill should now recant. So it's almost all of that phrase, which I think is fascinating. Being a philosopher's daughter, I decided to look into identity and change as a philosophical concept, and I learned it was a metaphysical concept. And the Wikipedia page warns you right away that it is a deceptively simple concept. But I decided to read, and I read a lot about ships and Leibniz's law and all sorts of things, and I realized by the end of it that it defeats the purpose to sort of give the gist of philosophy. That's not what philosophy is about. So I'm not going to try to do that. Also, I'm not qualified to do that. But how I think it relates to Uncharted 4 is that even just on the surface value of identity and change is, can people change, and what does that make their identity? So I think that relates to Nathan Drake, to Sam, and even Avery, is that what does this change mean, and how does it relate to their identity? Yeah. So does it change them? Are they a completely different person, or are they still the same person but slightly altered? Is basically how I think it relates to Uncharted 4 without going too much into philosophy. This concept lends itself easily to the overarching concept in Uncharted of duality. And speaking of duality, we have the statue of a young, somewhat healthy woman standing on bones and holding skulls. And this figure reminds me a lot of Santa Muerte, which is Spanish for holy death. She is usually a female deity or folk saint, depending on the school of thought, and she is generally clad in a long cloak holding at least one object. Now, granted, this differs a little bit because Santa Muerte almost always has a skeleton face, and her robe is female. Sometimes she has hair that is female as well. So although this statue isn't directly Santa Muerte, this statue has a figure, which generally Santa Muerte does not. The fact that it's reminiscent of Santa Muerte, I think, is important because Santa Muerte is the personification of death for sure, but she's associated with protection, healing, and safe delivery to the afterlife. So there's that duality. She is death, but she also offers this safety. It's that flip side of the coin that she represents and that are so present. That theme of duality is so present in this game. With that line just there, I love the double entendre with it, that Nathan is aware that he is, quote, descending. Whether that's descending into madness, descending into his morals, it's a bit telling because, of course, this is the path Henry Avery went down. So whether they will follow, they're fated to follow the same path as Henry Avery, or if they can break away and make their own path, their own fate, has yet to be determined, really. You'll notice another color shift, dramatic, of this ghostly kind of ethereal blue, and we're about to enter a place that is this stagnant, sickly green.
God, are those the Restitutes?
It reeks of death, which is appropriate for this area.
You know, Avery likes to make an example of his enemies.
Definitely likes making exploding mummies.
And I think it's interesting because before Nathan was sort of an observer of death, this memento mori has gotten stronger throughout the game. So before Nathan, it was only referenced lightly that it could happen. And then when Nathan was even in the mansion just a chapter ago, and he was faced with death, he ran into it. And when he walked around the table, he was still apart from it. He wasn't immersed in it. And now that he's descended, he's literally surrounded by death. There is so many bodies. He had to walk through these skeletons. He couldn't avoid them. The longer Nathan spends with this Avery case or search, the more he is literally surrounded by death. I'm not sure if it's because I've recently watched The Last of Us 2 trailer or what, but that scene that Nate and Elena just walked through of all the dead bodies in the lower area in that crevasse reminded me of I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, which of course is a line in that song, The Last of Us 2 trailer, but it's actually from the Bible, from Psalm 23:4. And it goes, "Yes, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me." In this case, I think the Bible version is more applicable to me and Elena in this case. She's with him, and so he is braver than he might have been alone. He might be more willing to despair, to wonder if Sam's dead.
No.
But since they're together, they help support each other and give each other courage. I mean, this place they are at is literally, death is impending towards them. It is exploding. It cannot get any more well. I don't know if it could, but I don't think it can get much more dramatic than this. And they're keeping their heads about them pretty well, all things considered. Perhaps they're the epitome of a power couple. It's only when the explosions are almost literally right beneath them do we hear a little bit of panic in their voices. I hate to cut it off. Get my pun. Sorry. I hate to cut it off at this scene, but especially since it's so full of drama, but this scene is about to end. This chapter is about to end, and you'll have to just wait another week. So I hope you comment, subscribe, and maybe give me some feedback on what you thought. Hope to see you next week. Thanks. Bye.